Brandon.
Hey, Alan.
And welcome to Dice Over Everything, the miniatures gaming podcast.
So have you ever really gotten into watching those like TV shows like X Factor and America's Got Talent? Like back in the not lately, but back in the day when like reality TV was like really going hot.
I passed by while my parents were watching it when I would visit my parents.
Yeah.
But that's as far as I got, basically.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I more watched the other reality TV shows like Survivor and
Jersey Shore.
I was gonna avoid one.
Okay.
But yeah, it's sort of neat how they turn like what an actual profession is into like some sort of weird game where people's personalities are involved. And it's like, well, technically singing is a profession, but just turn it into a whole game.
Yeah.
And for some reason that gets people really interested.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is the competition. They turn it into a competition, even though it's supposed to be about this other grander thing that people enjoy just for the sake of it.
Yeah.
If you add the competition, people that are not necessarily so into it will tune in just to see, the cat fights and stuff.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. People like drama.
Yeah.
So that oddly brings us to a game we've been playing, which,
we've added a lot of drama too. How dare you? How did you choose that faction? That was going to be my faction.
Yeah, you can always have drama behind the scenes, and maybe it's part of the game. Maybe it's just not part of the outside of the game, and it has nothing to do with the skills of playing the game.
But it makes it more exciting if we had filmed it, us playing it.
It does. So we don't know too many people who play this game, so I guess there's not that much drama at this point.
Yeah.
But we've been playing a bit of Blood Bowl lately, so I guess that's what we want to talk about this week. Where it's in the Warhammer old world. So, there's armies battling each other. That's kind of like a parallel universe of the old world. But instead of focusing on their battles, you're like, oh no, here's this like other competition you can have that has more drama behind it. And it's kind of like, you figure it shouldn't decide how anything works in the world, but for some reason it's actually like pivotal to the world.
Yeah, because it's going into our future where people don't want heavily armed conflict anymore. So instead, they just decide things with drama competition games like they do in Blood Bowl. As long as there's still some blood and guts that end up on the field, that's really what people want to see. So,
well, I'm hoping we resort to dance fighting and not UFC to resolve our conflicts. Just for the entertainment factor. Not,
of course, pop bands and things like that. Dancing off 5-on-5.
Yep.
It can be like that European show that's got quite popular.
X Factor.
Excuse me. No, Eurovision.
Okay, I thought X Factor.
That's apparently huge, where people and it helps bring people together. So maybe it does resolve things. Europe is getting closer, except for Brexit.
Well, they've got to bring.
Does that mean that UK is no longer part of Eurovision?
Well, I was going to say they have to have like their own. They have to develop their own league to have a team to fight the K-pop bands. But anyway.
Oh, yeah, exactly. They got to train up. K-pop's on top right now. Yeah. All right. So back to our actual topic, Blood Bowl. So like you said, we've been playing a bit of Blood Bowl, dipping our toes into. Why exactly did we start doing this and assemble models and paint them up and get into it again?
I don't recall exactly, but I'll create a new history. There was a box with orcs in it, and then you bought it. I don't know.
Yeah, kind of. It's actually the halflings. I think it's just, I like the halflings, and I'm like, I might as well buy the starter set. It comes with all the rules, and the orcs were cool, right?
Yep.
Because the new Blood Bowl, basically, it was Blood Bowl 2nd edition, came out.
Yep. It came out in 2020.
2020, yeah. So I guess it's called
they actually
season edition.
Yeah, and I think some people are calling it Blood Bowl 2020 as well, just because it's so confusing. It's not actually the
Yeah,
second.
they had to, exactly. It's not the actual second edition, so they couldn't call it second edition. So they called it second season edition to differentiate it from the second edition, which came out in like the 80s or something like that. So this is the second edition of the reboot, the recent reboot of Blood Bowl, called second season edition or Blood Bowl 2020. And so that came out, and basically I was just looking at it, and things were cute, and I had an itch to buy stuff, and just the idea of halflings playing football against giant orcs, especially the orcs in the box, where the orcs are huge in that box, just kind of cracked me up, and I thought that was hilarious. So I ended up buying it, and I then played a couple games just against myself because this was during lockdown, right? And I was like, hey, this game is pretty good. And so I painted up my entire box, and I haven't even painted my halflings yet, but I painted up my entire box, and I think my dwarves are on next. Oh, I went on a crazy binge, and I got you to, I talked it up a bit, and then I got you to buy in. But unfortunately, we couldn't play it because it was lockdown. So finally, once we started playing, I guess we started meeting up in August, once you had, shots and everything like that. We finally were able to get it in the queue of different games we wanted to play, and we did play it with fully painted armies, which is the best way to play, which was great.
It's a skirmish game, so there's no excuse not to get it painted up. Well, I don't know if I'd even call it a skirmish. It's hard to call it a skirmish
it's like
game.
A board game.
It is more like a board game.
But I guess it's like a miniatures board game.
Yeah, it's got the whole dice rolling mechanics of like having your fight values, having your armor values, having injury results of a miniatures game. But it
is a miniatures game. It's just the reason why I'm loath to actually call it like a full war game or whatever is, first of all, it's actually football, and then it is modeling football, right?
Yep.
And then the second thing is it uses spaces, right? So it has instead of using like true measurements, it has like a grid basically that you play on.
Except for the range ruler thing, which comes into play when you're passing. And in that case, it's actually just the template that matters. It has one template.
But it's not, because that template is supposed to be, maybe that really is how it's supposed to be, but they just translated it to that grid.
Possibly, but the whole, when you make a diagonal pass, like it doesn't follow any exact pattern of, it's very difficult to find out the pattern of squares for like who could intercept, because the long template passes over them. Like it actually starts to matter just what the template is.
I guess that's weird.
I know it is weird, but
so with one template, man, this is definitely a game from the 80s. Like think about the mix of that. It's a grid, you move in spaces, but you have this one template, which I technically, once you play the game a lot, you can probably just know like what that template would cover, and therefore convert that into, actual spaces about which spaces block what. Yep. But overall, so we played this game. We actually tried to play this game earlier and like talk about it before. So this game has actually been in the queue like twice. But what happened the first time we played it?
Well, there's a bit of a curve to learning all the rules, because there's quite a few rules to the game. The game's not extraordinarily complicated, but it just has like a very large number of special rules. Not for each model, but just spread out over all your models. There's a lot of different abilities you can do, a lot of different conditions for allowing the abilities for like when you can do them. So our first game, we only got through one half, and we're like, this is the length of the whole game. We're good.
Yeah, actually what happened is we're going through the rule book, we read it, and then we're playing it out, and then we're getting close to the end of the track, because you're supposed to track your number of turns, and it goes up to 8 on a little tracking board, right, of how many turns you've had. And we're like, oh, we're getting pretty close. This has been a long time, but it was like 3 hours at that point.
Yeah, we're at it's like turn 7. Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, we're like, oh, this is not so bad. First game, it'll get faster. And then I was like, wait a second. And I looked at the rules, and I'm like, oh my God, this is half the game. 8 is only half time. You're supposed to play it again. And we're like, forget this. We got to stop today. We'll come back another day and try to play a full game. So there was a lot to learn. I think, do you feel like it's actually really complicated to learn, or do you feel like we were unprepared, and also the rule book is that maybe there were issues with the rule book layout and stuff like that.
Yeah, the rulebook layout doesn't really like send you through the course of playing a game
Yeah,
so
I think
well.
so.
And that a lot of people from looking it up, they're like, well, it has this reference sheet, but the reference sheet's not actually very useful.
It's missing so many important things. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It has a few things on it. And
Mm-hmm.
the only good thing I found about the reference sheet is that it refers you back to the rule book. You're like, oh, what's this rule? It's like, oh, just go see the rule book. Don't try to figure this out from the sheet. There's too much going on. So it's kind of like an index almost.
Yeah, and the issue with the rule book is that there's a lot of like layout issues, in my opinion. I think if you read it front to back and you memorized it, technically all the rules are there, right?
Yep.
But when you're trying, when you read it, well, I don't know if you read the full rule book, but I read it front to back, but I didn't remember everything because, you know, the first time I read it was during COVID, and then we came back to it to play it again. So I was trying to reference it back to like, where did I read this rule? What was the exact thing? And I could not find it because there's so many places where something is relevant. Like in the second time we played it, where we did manage to play a full game in basically the same amount of time. We ended up playing the second game, which was, I guess, our first full game against real people, like for 3.5 hours, right?
Yeah, we were twice as quick as the first. We were twice as quick as the first game.
Hey, if it happens every single time, then I'll start playing a reasonable amount of time. But we tried to look up a rule about what happens if you fumble the ball when you throw it.
If you make a pass, the catcher fails to make the catch.
And we were like looking, and we we're like, I don't get it. Like, there's all of this text about how your guy who's trying to catch it, like the steps that they should go through to catch it, but there's no description of what you're supposed to do if you catch it or if you fumble it. It just says these are the modifiers and roll a dice, and I'm like, okay, and then what? There's no and then. It's just like apparently at the beginning of the section for throwing, even before the actual description of how you throw the ball, right? So there's the passer and thrower. There's a section before that describes the end result of what happens if you catch or fumble it.
Yep.
And then that just says fumble, but it's not keyworded.
No, it's not.
Just says fumble.
Not bolded. It's not like capitalized or anything. You're just like, is this just like a description, or is this like a game term? Like, I don't know. It could just be like descriptive, like illustrative, not just like an actual rule name.
Yeah. And then that was actually, I was wrong. That wasn't even the right place. That was for if the thrower fumbles it. And then we had to look up even further on when we were reading later on. We kind of just said, okay, I think it's just, it bounces or something like that, right? And then we had to go back to the bouncing portion where it's like, oh, if you fail a catch or something, then it was in the rules of fumbling. If you fail a catch or do whatever, then this happens. And I'm like, this is the very beginning of the book, and you're just supposed to remember it. Like, why could they not just put in those extra 2 sentences saying, if you succeed, they now hold the ball, and if you fail, it fumbles. What's wrong with that repetition, as opposed to say, oh no, we mentioned it all the way at the beginning in passing, describing it before you even know what throwing is and passing is. We're going to mention that if you do it, you fumble it.
Yeah, or just have some sort of like chart thing of what steps you go through, just as like the introduction. And then you're like, okay, I know what I'm getting into for when I read these rules. I know what to expect.
Like a better reference sheet that actually goes through.
Yeah.
With a little, like a little flow chart, right? It goes down and says.
Because the reference sheet doesn't lay stuff like that out for the basics. It's more, the reference sheet is good, and it's got the tables that you may need to use on a periodic basis and like outcomes. So like the reference sheet has a purpose. It just doesn't really help you learn to play the game. It's more just once you're like moderately familiar and you need to look at outcomes.
Good in between. In between knowing the rules fully and not knowing the rules at all, then it's good somewhere in between, I guess. I guess it's good for your friend once you know how to play the game and they're following along.
Yes.
But not even though, because you have to read the book. I don't know what it's for. It's terrible.
It's probably good for like previous players to be like, oh, what's the new table for this? How does this work?
Oh, that makes sense. That's true. For players who are moving to the second edition, or sorry, second season edition.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that might be something that's plagued the game. It's just this assumption.
Yeah.
Like everybody who wrote the rules, everybody who play tested the rules may have seen this so many times before that they only care about like the tables, the new tables, and the new like modifiers. And they're not actually thinking from a new player perspective of how do you read this thing.
Yes. So it was pretty terrible in that instance, just being able to figure out how to play the game for the rulebook, which really slowed us down. I feel like this is a problem in general with most Games Workshop written rules. They come out in like super fancy books. They look really pretty. The graphic design is top notch. It's like some of the best graphic design in like just books in general, right? It looks better than like a lot of art books I have, right? In terms of layout and stuff like that. But the actual editing about like the words and the actual editing to be useful as a reference are generally terrible in Games Workshop games. Like it's like their editor is just like they don't have one.
Yeah, and the layout, like a lot of the pages, usually when you see like red boxes on like a miniature game rulebook, the red box will be like, well, remember, it'll be like a side note of like noting some interaction that the rule may cause, or it might just be a fluff piece. It's like an aside that's not core to the rules. But I mean, this is just how we've been trained to read things in miniature games. But the Blood Bowl rulebook will have giant red sections. And it's like, oh no, this is just the rules in this giant red area. And it's just something you don't expect from most rulebooks.
Yeah, it's just hard to follow. And I guess this is a problem with, like I said, with all Games Workshop games, even the ones that I feel like are the best written, like Middle Earth Strategy Battles, which is honestly some of the best written rules that they have. Even then, it's just really hard to follow.
Yeah, I would say Fantasy Flight's almost like
stuff.
I would say Fantasy Flight's like pretty top notch for rule writing usually.
Yeah, they kind of break it down into two pieces. So they have like a full-on rules reference, which is just by text, and then they have the like a how to start rule book that literally flips you through your first game,
plays you through something.
Yeah, so you have your like run-of-the-mill thing. So it's good for people who know almost nothing about your game except for the fact that your box is looking cool at the start. However, there are issues with that way of rulebook writing, because if you've kind of played before, you don't want to go through the initial how to play, right? Which gives you the context for the second rulebook. But if you just skip and try to use the second rulebook entirely, you will not you might miss some of the flow that is part of the how to play rules that you're supposed to play first. So there's like a give or take, but they're definitely getting better and better with it as well, right?
Yep. Yeah. Well, beyond that, so I guess you bought the starter box and I did not, because I'm like, someone else will have the starter box.
Wait, are we done bashing the rulebook and rules writing? Also, the references for the stats were terrible as well. Like there's names for the stats. I don't know.
Oh yeah, they're divided into different sections, but you're not quite sure why they're divided into those certain abilities are in certain sections. Like there's a logic behind it once you really look at it. But if you're new to the game, you're like, I don't know why the rules are alphabetical, but they're divided into different sections. And I don't know why. So I don't really know which section to look to for this rule.
Yeah, I probably maybe I wonder if they were actually there written. Here, I gotta go check that, but you continue on. I gotta go grab my rule book since we're talking about it and bashing it so much.
All right. So on the note of actually getting into the game, you who are not sitting at the table, which is Alan, bought the whole box game, which comes with the rule book, the board, double-sided board to play on, and it came with the template dice and the dugouts where you mark like the condition of your guys and if you've got reserves. Yep. So if you don't buy that giant box,
it's actually a very nice box.
It is. The contents are all quite nice.
Okay, it even has like a little shiny thing, like a sports game for authenticity that you'll often have with sportswear.
Like if you're buying like if you had those playing card sleeves with the little like holographic thing in the corner of the playing card sleeve.
I was thinking about like hats and stuff, right? When you have like a hat with an official whatever kind of hat, they'll have a little shiny thing, which is a nice.
They'll have the hologram thing, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So because if you don't want those main factions, which the orcs are very cool, not as big on the human side, but if you didn't want like as many miniatures either, because you're like, oh, I want to treat this like a skirmish game, I just want to buy the miniatures. Yeah, for the people watching, Alan is holding up one of the black orcs. They're
very cool.
They're very beefy looking orcs.
Yeah,
and they're very football looking. But I'm like, I don't want all these game contents around. I'm not gonna like.
You don't want these fancy noble humans. I guess they're just paid by nobles.
Yeah, they're okay.
Versus the orc.
Versus the awesome giant orcs.
Yeah.
Yeah, the orcs looked disproportionately badass. But if you don't buy that, like I didn't, I'm like, okay, what do I actually need to play this game? If, say, you showed up at a group who's more into it. So I bought the Underworld Denizens team, which is the Skaven come on with a bunch of goblins. But I'm like, okay, if I'm going to show up to play, maybe I probably want to buy dice on top of this. Just you want your own dice to roll. So
you want your own fancy dice, yeah, of course.
It just seems like in every war game you show up with dice. It's pretty customary, expected. But like the template thing doesn't seem as necessary. Like having everybody have this giant template lying around, probably not as needed. Do you need your own dugout? Because like I guess third-party people sell the dugouts, but if someone sets up the board, they have both dugouts. So beyond
you can even make your own dugout.
You could.
Some people make their own board and then model their own board, which is kind of cool.
If it was my main game, I absolutely would do that. But
yeah, that's true.
But like, what do you think? Do you think it's really possible to play the game without buying the starter set?
Yes.
Well,
first of all, you need the rules. So here's the thing. Yes, but the box is such a good deal that it almost doesn't make sense. Because once you add up the new rules, I guess if you have like an old edition, then
you need all the new tables. The thing is,
that's the thing. If you have an old edition, you will have the dugouts, you will have the board, you will have your miniatures, and you have your dice. All you need is the new book. Then sure, you'd buy the book, right? But if you are new getting into the game, there's so much stuff in the box, and it's such a good deal. I think it's like 150, which is not cheap. But it comes with 2 full teams. It comes with some cool referee models, and it comes with 2 like bigger guys, an ogre and a troll. So it's not just like if you went out and bought the $50 box, right? Which is for the cost for a team. And then it comes with the rule book and it comes with a board. Like if you just add all this stuff up, you're not saving too much money unless you just buy the book. Like if you just buy the book in 2 teams, that's already $150, right? Which is the same cost as the box.
And you're probably going to go buy the dice for another $15 or 2 sets of dice because you got 2 teams.
So it's actually more expensive. You're right, because you get 2 sets of dice. So like if you didn't like the 2 teams in the box, it becomes right. Then you have a book, your dugouts and your dice and your templates. And the board, like it's getting pretty close. And if you can sell those 2 teams like for cheap, like $10 or $20, you're still up, right?
Yeah. So how the teams work is obviously the rule book has all the team options laid out in it. So for the team I bought that has a combination Skaven and Goblins, they've organized how you can build the team around that box so that you don't actually have a lot of options with like changing the guys around, other than buying like the inducement people who are sort of the more special characters. There isn't too much variability with what you can do with that team. With those starting teams, is there a lot of variability like with what you can take, or is it more or less set to the box? Like, would you actually have an advantage by having 2 sets?
2 sets is too much. So I feel like, so for my nobles, there's like 11. You have 11 and you have an ogre, right? It comes with an ogre. So you have 2 guys that you can swap in. For the orcs, you basically have like 12 guys because the goblins are so cheap, right? So you have the troll, so then you end up having one guy extra. The issue is that
Like,
there's not much room to like expand your team, right?
look, for the
So it
humans, you
almost,
got the 2 throwers, but you can't really move. The allocation won't let you have 3 throwers if you say wanted
well,
to.
if you bought a second thing, you would need like a cup. You only really need a couple of things, right? You might want a couple more of the line, the blitzer, or the actually you have 4 bodyguards at the beginning game, at the beginning team. So I don't even think you need more bodyguards, but you might have a couple blitzers or maybe one more bodyguard or something like that. But you're gonna buy like a full box just to get like 3 models.
Well, that's the thing. If you
Like we will, because we're crazy. If this was our main game, we would have. But but the problem is that that's the only way you can get nobles, right? Is you buy that box, right? And then you have to have all these extra models of like linemen and stuff that you're not even going to use, right? Oh. So it becomes, to me, you only need a couple more guys. So it just makes sense to buy another full box of like 12 guys.
Yeah, so it's kind of difficult then to sell off. It's kind of difficult to sell off the guys if you buy the box and don't want the guys then.
Yeah.
If everybody needs the box.
The orcs, I don't even know if you want to, because you have like 12 guys. I guess you might want more goblins, but these goblins are different than the goblins in the other goblin teams. They look different. They have different models and they have different rules as well, right? The Black Orc goblins, they're a little bit tougher and they have different, they wear different stuff. So in my opinion, the aesthetic doesn't match. So you might want more just to add like a couple of more goblins and maybe 1 orc. But again, you're going to buy another box just for like 3 models or 4 models. Maybe.
Well, so it sounds like I'm going to have a tough time not having the box. But anyway, I like challenges. Oh, playing the game.
I don't think you really need to. I think basically because you only have 11 guys, like you don't really, unless you're really into the game and you want to have like, your numbers really mean something, right? So each guy has a number, then you might want to do it, right? Especially if you're playing a campaign. In a one-off game, first of all, you're not going to have more, right? Because every game is around a certain size and they're fit to, like, every box that you buy is fit to be a full team.
Yeah, but I'm talking about not buying the starter box at all, like 0 copies.
You don't need a starter box.
Yeah, okay.
The only reason you need like the second season edition starter box is if you need the rule book and the dugout and stuff like that, right?
Okay. Yeah, and I guess if you had the previous edition, you have dice already. So
yeah. So because as long as 1% of your friends has the rule book, you only need 1 rule book between all of you, right? And then
once you
can just pass around the rule book and stuff like that for the rules, or make sure that everyone has some sort of references for that.
Yeah, and as we were talking about before, it's probably a game that's easier to learn by having someone explain it to you than by going through the rule book. So
because the rule book sucks, again, because it's just a Games Workshop rule book. But it's very pretty. So I don't know. There's good and bad. I like collecting rule books even if they're crappy inside. All right, so we spent so much time kind of like bashing the rule book and saying, there's another issue. I'll just go through all the bad stuff first. The game felt too long. I know we played really, really slowly, but I'm not sure how fast it could get. Like, to me, it's like a 2-hour game, which in our old age is starting to get a little bit long. So
I guess if you want to feel like a sport, it's like, okay, it's 2 hours.
That's true, around 2 hours. So maybe that's about right. But it did feel a bit long. I feel like it would be better if it was a little bit shorter, but that is what it is. So now we're done with all that kind of stuff. Let's get to the good stuff. First of all, despite all of that, what did you think of the game?
The game is actually fun. Like,
it was really fun.
Yeah.
And very thematic.
But it feels like there's the right amount of decisions you can make. So you're not like, it doesn't feel like the game plays itself, which is always terrible when you feel like you're just sitting there doing moving numbers on an abacus, because you're just like, clearly this just moves next. And it doesn't feel like it feels like your choices matter to it, like your game plan, like there's different levels of risk you can go for.
A lot of risk you can take, a lot of change in the risk that you can take. There's a lot of push your luck in the game.
Yeah, so I from like the perspective of what makes a really fun miniatures game, like it's got that fun core to it. So that's a huge plus. I'm sure that's it's had a few additions behind it. So from what I've heard, like people appreciate what's been done with this edition.
Yeah. So basically anything that's just been like polished, that's just polish, has been generally good. There has been some apparently hubbub about a rebalancing of throw teams, like agility teams. So teams that are supposed to throw and pass, as opposed to bashing teams, which are supposed to overrun you.
Yep.
There has been some issues with the balance of that, but apparently but besides that, apparently, well, I guess there's another issue that I read, that like we didn't play them, but there's these star players are too good, because they rebalance a bunch of star players, and then just, again, this is Games Workshop balancing, right? Things that were not fully balanced from the community, because this game was community run for like 4, 5, maybe even 10 years. And then Games Workshop decided to make money off of it by republishing it and taking it over again. And then they published new guides and new rules and changed up things, right? And apparently some of the star players are overpowered, and it's kind of throwing off the balance of the game.
Yeah, I can see how they play test things less. But
exactly, because Games Workshop doesn't play test things. But besides that, apparently, all the other things, you have over 20, 30 years. Is it not 30 years of more than 30 years of polish, I think, on this game, right? This game is a 30-year-old game. It was good back then, and they've just modified it and polished it. Unlike, let's say, Warhammer 40,000, where even though it's 9th edition, so you would think they polished it 9 times, they're on their 3rd iteration of the game that is very, very different than the initial game. Like, there was the 1st and 2nd edition, which was the first version. 3rd edition was an entirely different game, just called Warhammer 40,000. And then 8th edition was another different game that was, again, just renamed for Warhammer 40,000, but a different game. But this one, it's basically the fundamental game is the same for 30 years, and that kind of polish and iteration kind of shows through, and it has, I think, really, there's a reason why it lasted 30 years.
Yep. So the other thing about the balancing is I liked how they would tell you that, this game isn't totally balanced. There's different tiers to the teams out there, so that you weren't going into it and like people couldn't just complain like, the balancing's no good. It's like, they told you that. What are you complaining about? If you decide to play the lower tier team, you're going to have more of a challenge. It's fine. Like it clearly spells out to you that this is supposed to be like a beer and pretzels game where you agree to what you're fighting each other with. It's like, okay, you're the more experienced player. I should get to take an A team and you have to take a C team, or maybe we're more evenly matched. So we should both take like B tier teams.
Yeah.
So,
and I think that really kind of sells, like, that just reinforces the theme of the game. First of all, it's a brilliant way to balance out the game, like to deal with imbalance in teams, because you just say, they're not balanced, and now and just deal with it, right? Like with the player, and it forces people to play in that kind of way, like you said, right? To have that social contract with the player, with the people you're playing. But it also reinforces the theme of the game, because in football or sports, there are certain teams that are just better than other teams, and everyone knows. And there's certain teams that are just like, I'm just happy that I scored, right? Or that they scored, right? If you're like I haven't followed it. If you're a Leafs fan, right? Lisa, when's the last time
first round? Oh my God.
Yes, exactly. Wow, they made it into the playoffs. Or they didn't get knocked out in the first round of the playoffs. So like, that's just, everyone's happy for that. And then there's other teams that are like, what? We didn't make it into the finals? What the hell? They disappointed us, right? They had all of these star players and everything like that. So that kind of reinforcement of the sport is just works so well, and that's littered throughout the game, right? This is definitely a product of the 80s, where the games that were written were definitely defined by the themes that they tried to bring about, as opposed to clever mechanics, right? There's like this huge movement, and it's actually probably started with board games in the Eurobore movement, right? The Euro games that they call them. And like where games people are just interested in mechanics, right, and tinkering, and it's like you're basically just playing puzzles, right? And this kind of thing of making clever, streamlined, beautiful puzzles and making people's minds click through them, but like devoid of theme and story, is a thing that's kind of taken over. And in some ways, you know, I like that kind of thing because like there's good aspects and bad aspects to it, right? But when you're talking about the 80s, that movement hadn't come through yet. And basically, if you're playing a game, it's almost all of these games from the 80s are super clunky, right? And they're just like, as long as it's more thematic and reinforcing the fun and the theme, put it all in there, right? And you have these giant monstrosities of games that are not streamlined and might take extra long because you have to roll on 3 or 4 tables that do crazy stuff that reinforces that kind of theme. Like there's a Nuffle table that crazy stuff happens in this
weather
thing.
tables, there's injury tables, there's tables after tables. It's very
exactly
feels very harkening back to the early iterations of 40K.
Yeah, story-based kind of thing, right? Like, oh, this happened, so what would happen? Here are the options that would happen. Oh my God, this kind of crazy thing happened, right? As opposed to like, oh, I'm trying to outthink my opponent, and I'm trying to like, if I move, like if I change this A to B, then I'm on B track, and that will outplay my opponent later on, right? Which is more like almost like a chess kind of thing, right? So this game is not like that, and I love it for that, right?
Yeah, it still like, rewards your planning because it's not like it's not fully random, but there's still a crazy thing that can happen just because of there's so many levels of randomness that can happen,
and you have to be ready for that, right? And I think that's one of the things that kind of helps is that the initial game had that great balance of actual like strategy, push your luck, and theme, and the refinement of the game over these years. Actually, I don't know. I haven't played the initial game. Maybe the initial game was even better. Who knows?
So one of the other things I did like is talking about theme is that the factions we've played so far have actually felt quite different. Because some games you're like, oh, it's just a little tweak to this side for this faction. Like this faction has a little more armor. Maybe this army can make one extra move here and there. No, like there's huge differences in the speed of some of the teams. There's huge differences in the durability of some of the teams. Like the difference is really stark between factions from what I found.
Yeah, it's true. They play very differently, right? They had the Black Orcs who are just like pushing people around and trying to beat them to death, right? Team up and beat them to death.
And they're super tough.
Yeah, and super tough. And then you have like your like mixed faction. What was they called again?
The Underworld Creepers.
Yeah, the Underworld Creepers, which is like more of a mix with some really fast guys, but they're like much more fragile, right? But they have a much easier time of just like running it and scoring it, right?
If they want to slip through the lines, they could slip through the lines really easily. But if you're trying to use them to block your opponent, it's gonna like you're gonna take a lot of pain while you do it.
Yeah, so I just thought that was interesting. And then the nobles, which I don't know, felt like humans, a little bit of everything kind of thing. A little bit more steadfast, I think. They're actually they're steadfast, but they're not necessarily, they can't really beat you up as much.
They're hard to push through, but they don't push back super hard.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of jack of all tradesy.
Yeah, exactly. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Yeah, I totally agree. And again, that just reinforces kind of the theme and the way the game plays. I guess why it's important for the theme, I know I've harkened all this in, but it really does feel like watching football. I haven't really played football, so I can't tell you if it's like playing football as a coach or something like that. But it does feel like you're, from what I would imagine a coach would feel like when they're ordering their players on the pitch.
Yeah, because going back and forth between the player turns, like, oh, I pushed a little bit further towards the end zone. I couldn't totally make it. All right, you're going to chase, like, okay, you're going to chase me. Now we're going to fight off at this line. Yeah. Now I'll try and like get a bit more ground.
And I really like the crux of the push your luck thing is that every one of your guys can activate once, right? But if any of your guys fails majorly on a task, or basically fails in a task, you end your turn and none of the rest of your guys can activate. And now it goes to the other person, right? So this becomes a huge thing because there's a lot you can push your luck on, right? It's not just like, the main thing is like hitting the guy, blocking the guy and pushing them. But if you don't team up on a guy, then it's like you're rolling one die and there's like a 1/3 chance of failing, right? Yep. And then, so you want to team up. And then you can also, though, when you're running, every single time you run, you can like, a normal guy has like 6 movement, and you can actually push 2 extra movement, which is huge. You can get an extra 3rd movement if you roll a D6 and on a 2 and up, which means you can push your luck that way, right? There's all these different ways to push your luck, and there's some mitigating factors of paying for rerolls, but you only get like 2 to 4,
depending on
2 to 4
how much they cost and how many you want.
2 to 4 for the whole game, so it becomes super important to do. I love that like feeling of, am I down? Am I playing down? Does that mean I have to push my luck and like just go for it? But if I fail, I'm even more back than I was before. If the first guy I need to hit a guy and then I just rolled unlucky, right? And like I don't know, even if I teamed up on a guy, I might have like I roll 2 dice with a 1 in 3 chance of failure, so it becomes a 1 in 9 chance or something like that of failure. If I roll that 1 in 9, I could be screwed.
Yeah.
So it's for those people that, that love that chaos and dealing with risk mitigation, right? It just makes crazy moments, especially like there's a point in the last game we played where it felt like football, where, I tried to move the ball. I failed in picking it up, right? I was trying to pick up the ball and throw it. I failed.
You failed to pick it up. Yep. Yeah, it was one of your throwers. Was trying to pick it up. Was that
the one where you ran through, picked up, and then?
Yeah, basically my little faster goblins, because he fumbled the ball while trying to throw it. So all my little goblins just ran over to him. And he's like, "Oh crap, I'm surrounded in goblins." Like, wasn't the big orcs who got to him, but just because he got like swarmed by a bunch of little goblins. He's like, God, I need to pick up the ball. And they're like, "No, I need to pick up the ball." And they're all just like jumping all over the ball while the big guys in the front are just like punching each other and not bothering.
And the orcs are stopping my guys from running back to help pick up the ball. And then there was one point where your goblins were trying to run by, and then he needed to like, and my guys were chasing behind him, and then your goblin is like, okay, I just need to push my luck to kind of make it. And then you failed, you fumbled the ball. So then I ran over to try to pick it up, and then I failed to pick up the ball. Like I was able to run my guy up to actually reach the ball, but I failed. Like I had to push my luck to even get to the ball. But when I rolled to pick it up, I fumbled the ball again. So then it was your turn. And so then you ran up and you like fought, your goblin grabbed it again to like rush it to the finish line. That kind of mechanic, like that tells a story, right? That's like a story that you have in football with the things, right? And that just felt like so thematic. It was really exciting with the turnover, right? We had both used up all our rerolls, probably stupidly because we didn't know how to play the game before that time.
We should have saved them for when it's like when a point is about to be scored by the reroll. You use the reroll, which is new. So like, I just kind of want this random play to work.
So, but that kind of a play, I don't know, it was so thematic, and it kind of lined up with the way you want to play, and people running after people when you're trying to like, when the ball is fumbled right before the line. Of course, I guess into actual football, once it's fumbled, you kind of end the play, but for this one, you kind of continue on, which makes it more exciting and fun.
Yeah, it creates like any game that can create those moments you can describe to somebody else, and they kind of understand like what was going on. Like, oh, that's a crazy situation that happened. Some games you can't like make that description very well. And it's often like the bigger games, like in skirmish level games, it's just easier to describe. Once you hit like the whole army level game, it's just like, I attritioned this and I attritioned that. They're like, oh yeah, okay.
Yeah.
It just doesn't.
And then the I go, you go thing with like crazy, stupid. Oh, so then my captain was right next to my Devastator squad who was able to buff him. And then also there was another guy next to him, so I was able to super buff him. Then I used this stratagem and then I fired and I blew up his thing. I was just like, is that really exciting? What's the exciting moment there? The exciting moment, I guess, is technically I unloaded all these things and I didn't kill it. I guess that's the exciting moment. But like
at some point when the mechanics don't like feel as tangible, you're just like, I just move the bead across the abacus and I move this bead the other way to pay for it. It's like, okay, that's not exciting.
Yeah, it doesn't feel as thematic, right, as well, right? A lot of the rules in like 40K or these bigger games or War Machine and stuff like that, they feel so gamey and they're not thematic, right? Like I was talking about Eurobor versus Ameritrash kind of games. Like Eurobor games are just like, there's no theme, there's no story. It's just like, oh, these cool mechanics. Like it's one of those things where it's like, oh, you had to be there. I had to really think through and I had to do this like spreadsheet. And then once I was finished the spreadsheet, I got all the numbers to line up and it works. And I'm like, oh, that's exciting. Great. Good on that spreadsheet. I guess you must really like your accounting job. So like, I'm really against Euro games, as you can see. But yeah, so then there's games like this, right? So I really good, really fun, and the smash. There's I felt like there was that good mix of like running, right, trying to get the ball, versus smashing the guys, right, beating the guys up. Of course, it's called Blood Bowl, so there is a lot of smashing, knocking a guy down, trying to knock them off the pitch. And I love the theme of like knocking a guy out and trying to like beat the other team down so that they lose guys, so that at the end of the game you can kind of just run by them and win it. All right, so that kind of balance seems like really, really, really fun and cool. And I could see what there were some certain complaints about, like if you take a bash team, you can take heroes, I guess they're called like star players, who are runners, which kind of throws over the entire balance you're talking about, right?
Oh yeah, if you can do everything, like if your team is good at everything, then I can see how that would cause a problem.
Yeah, or you take a running team and then you take a star player that's good at bashing or whatever. Yeah, it kind of messes up the theme.
Yeah, if you can break through their lines really easily and then run through their lines, having that combination, obviously that can get broken.
It almost feels like, I don't know. From what I'm hearing, I'm like, would you even need to play star players? It doesn't even make sense, in my opinion. The star player idea, like if this game is definitely supposed to play in campaign mode, right? Doesn't it make sense that you train up your guys to become your star players as opposed to buying like star players that stay that way and don't get experience and are mercenaries and go on any team? It just doesn't feel like the core of the game. Even though I guess competitively it's become one.
I guess it made shit for them to sell. And I bought a bunch of them because they were cool looking.
Because they look cool. Yeah, like I think you mentioned that there's some really nice looking ones that you like that are like kind of whatever. Yeah, so I guess that goes to mentioning, those star players that you bought. What do you think about the models?
Oh, the models are nicely detailed. Like obviously they have lots of character to them. Like they have all these extra little details going on. Usually they have the variability in the sculpts is good because you don't have so many guys going on. No, the sculpts are all like, obviously there's some older sculpts left, but like all the more recent. No. If you've redone them all now,
that's the reason why. No, those are all new resculpts from the first edition.
The elves don't look that good to me. That's why. Like the quality of them.
That's probably because you don't like elves. Have you ever liked elves? They're new sculpts. They're not selling any old sculpts. So all the new teams are new sculpts. So that's the thing. Like, actually, that's part of the reason. First of all, I agree with you. I don't like any of the elves either. Yeah, but they're new sculpts.
Yeah, they are new. It's just I don't like the sculpt. Whereas the other teams all have pretty cool looking sculpts.
Yeah.
Like just the amount of like little details going on in the model is really it's really good.
The one thing I don't quite like about the humans is they are kind of heroic scale. They're less heroic scale than they used to be, but they're still heroic scale, so they don't quite look like humans. But but besides that, I think like like I said, actually part of the reason why I wanted to play Blood Bowl is because I looked at the models and I'm like the game and like the theme always kind of interested me. I'm not into sports at all, right? But just the idea of it being like the silly, like violent fantasy, fantasy football, that kind of thing, I was up my alley.
Yep.
But I never liked the sculpts, so I never was cared about them. But seeing the entire line resculpted, especially like the goblins, the orcs, and the halflings, really got me into the game. I'm like, oh my god, these new sculpts are as good or sometimes even better than their I guess what you call them, like Age of Sigmar counterparts.
Yeah, and especially the old world, like the original Warhammer Fantasy equivalents. Because I
Yeah,
was always like, oh, it'd be cool to own some like Skaven. I wouldn't want a whole Skaven army because that would be like
yeah,
years of painting. But like, oh, I can have some Skaven this way. That's cool.
yeah. So yeah, I think it's really good, really great. And that's kind of uh some of these models I know some people even converted them to use outside of Blood Bowl because they're so nice. Like the orcs, the orc guys look really cool, right? They have this heavy kind of orcish armor, and uh and so if you could with a bit of conversion, you can just turn them into cool looking battle orcs, right? Give them swords or axes or something like that, right? And shields. And so yeah, like I think overall another great reason to get in the game is if you like these sculpts and if you like that kind of silly, like an orc in football gear, if you like that kind of idea, this game is right up your alley.
Yeah.
Or if you have a halfling with a teapot on his head as armor, although I guess that's getting more and more common these days just because it's ridiculous, right? But that's another reason to go play it.
Yep. If you just want fun models, it's all about fun models. And if you want to just like convert things
Yeah.
in fun ways,
Yeah,
and
and again,
the
it
base
reinforces
size
the theme.
is pretty the base size is pretty agnostic as well. They're like they have 32 millimeter bases, but like if the guy's really big, you can put him on a 40 and like they'll fit like on the board. So, or if you've
Yeah, it's
got the
kind
little
of weird
goblin.
though. I guess one thing with the models, they have a little hole to put your football on, but that's so fiddly.
Yeah, don't do it.
I don't
I think
know.
we've talked about this topic before of like marking things on the base itself, just from playing Drop Fleet, where Drop Fleet was like, you should mark 3 or 4 types of information on the base. And it's like, holy shit.
Yeah, it's such a pain
This
in
is
the
impossibly
ass.
fiddly. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so just putting it on the side.
Yeah. You know who has the ball. Like it's a key part of the game. Who has the ball? Like
Yes. Yeah, and then like having to pick it up and put the little football into the pin is such a pain in the butt.
and it doesn't look good either. Like it doesn't look good on
Yeah.
the base, having this hole in it in everybody's
I think
base.
the only thing you could do is magnetize it.
Interesting.
So instead of put a magnet in the hole and then
Thing is, like when another
magnetize the
guy comes,
ball,
yeah,
that could work. But otherwise, it's too hard to do. That's actually the solution we did with Drop Fleet 2, right?
it was
Create a metal
magnetize it.
ring
Yeah.
and then magnetize it. You just throw the little pieces on. So that worked. Yeah. So overall, I think the game is really good. I know we've kind of gushed about certain things and talked a lot about how bad the rulebook is and stuff like that. But overall, we talked a little bit about who the game is for and what makes the game good. But let's summarize that a bit. So who is this game for and who is this game not for?
Oh, so I think you have to have like it has to be has to be someone who wants a fairly deep war game because there's a lot of rules to it. So you can't just want like something that like that's super easy to pick up that you can just like remember the rules like off the top of your head, even if you haven't played for months, like say Frostgrave or what we're building, where you can just sort of like look at the sheet quickly. Okay, here it is. Like there's a lot of abilities, there's a lot of tables. So you've got to be willing to like play a difficult, like high rule count miniature game. But if you don't want it, if you don't have all the time in the world to paint things, you don't have all the time in the world to like play the game all the time, but you still like you want a deep game, this goes down that alley.
Yeah, and I think if you're really into the theme, first of all, even if you're not into football in general, if you're really into deep thematic games, I think this will really sell you. I think this game is way more thematic than a lot of games that you play, and there is a whole bunch of violence. I know we in the game, so if you like that kind of like action, right? Just watch football. Like it is action-packed game, right?
If you want to beat the guy while he's down, or you want to like throw them into the crowd, into an ultra violent crowd that'll kill the guys. Yeah.
It's so thematic that just even if you don't like football, if you just like story games, like you like watching a sports movie, right? Even if you're not into the sports in general or the real stuff, this will sell that kind of thing to you. And there's so much theme, like dripping theme. And again, you do have to go through all of those rules and make sure that you either have to have the time, right, to look it up and play like for 4 hours, or just play it enough that you remember it. But once you do that, like the theme and the fun that comes out of that is really great. Like I think this is one of the best Games Workshop games. I stand by that after playing a couple of real games. I think it's living up to the hype of what I was thinking. Like this game is one of the best Games Workshop games I've played.
Yeah, it's good they brought it back into the roster of boxed games.
Yeah. Now, the one thing is that you might not want a reason why you might not want to play is, I guess, if you really hate football.
Yeah, I guess the other thing,
if you're, I don't know if you're a baseball fan or something like that, so you hate how football overshadows that, maybe it'll bring flashbacks of lower attendance numbers or something.
Yeah, I guess if you're really into army building as well, the potential for army building is pretty small. So maybe you end up buying, you just buy more armies basically.
Yes,
that's true. How you get your fix to army buildings.
You can't do the fiddliness of like choosing this person or that person. I guess technically that's what the mercenaries, right, the star players are for, to give a little bit of that list building. But it does feel like there's not that much list building. There's only like 5 or 6 guys. The general armies play roughly how you want to play it, and so you're not going to switch up much.
So you're going to need, to keep the game fresh, you're probably going to need to keep buying armies. Oh no, they're in small
or play
boxes.
Campaign. But the thing is, you do build up the campaign. I feel like if you're the campaign kind of person, but if you're playing it one-offs, I don't think the game is going to be nearly as fun as if you play it in a league, right? Where you play the league, your armies get stronger, and maybe it's like an eight game league kind of thing. And at the very end, you play your playoffs, right? Of top 4 or something like that. That would be ideal. Or maybe you only have 4 players, right? You play 4 players, play 4 games, and then you play playoffs. Like that to me is the ideal way to play the game. It definitely seems like there's a lot of rules for the campaign play, the league play. So I think that's basically, and that again ties into the theme because of course sports leagues and stuff like that, right? So but if you're not into that, if you just want like one-off games here and there because you're a busy person, I guess this game might not be for you. All right, so any closing thoughts, or we basically summed it up there?
No, I think we summed up our sort of first thoughts on the game.
Okay, overall grade, do you have a grade for Blood Bowl in terms of, not like a number grade, but like, an overall one-line thoughts of what you would say?
Yeah, I think it's a good thing to get outsiders into. It's like they'll trap it'll trap some non-gamers.
It's a great
especially if they think they're like really smarty pants, like, oh, I'm a real smarty pants. It's like, oh, you'll be able to handle this then.
Yeah, that's true. Cadence. Oh, then you better, and then be like, oh, you're really good. Then take a C level team or tier 3 team, right?
I think it's more like all the video game players who like memorize all these like stats from video games and shit, or like card games. Like, oh, I memorize all this stuff. So, oh yeah, you'll have no problem with this then.
Yeah, and there's not that many models, so you can probably get them painted.
Yeah, it's not as intimidating to them. And it's like a sport. It's not like a war game. It's just a sport game.
That's true. That is true.
You can drag those friends into it.
Yeah, I think you have something there. Like, this is a great second game where you take a break from your normal game and play like a 2-month or 3-month league. So
yeah,
let's say
if you've got your giant Age of Sigmar army, you're like, okay, I don't feel like going to the game store with my like trunk with wheels on it. How about we just like take a break and do this little thing?
I was thinking more like you play Age of Sigmar for 9 months, and then you have your fall Blood Bowl league where you play for 2 months and you just play out the league, and that's your break, and then you go back to Age of Sigmar or Infinity or whatever. I think that this is a great way. This is a great game for that, right? Which solves all the issues. You're really into it. You play it dedicated for a while, and then you put it, and it's fun. It's a good break. It's kind of the thing, and then you kind of put it away and wait for next year, right? Which again becomes thematic, right?
Yeah, you have a season. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right, so that's our thoughts on Blood Bowl. If you have any comments on Blood Bowl, if you love Blood Bowl and you want to tell us our ideas or our thoughts, our initial impressions are stupid and or they're spot on, give us a shout. Tell us what you think. You can contact us at contact@diceovereverything.com.
Yeah, or find us on Facebook. We're Dice Over Everything Group, or join. Oh, we're Dice Over Everything, and join Dice Over Everything Group if you want to know what we're up to and let us know what you're up to.
All right. This has been Alan.
It's been Brandon.
Bye.